This is one of my favorite pieces, and I know an artist isn't supposed to have just favorite pieces. This is different because for me, because I included family names on this shack, and the family names came from two sources. It came from a college yearbook, and it came from my church's a calendar from my church. And I was writing down family names in Orangeburg County, and all of these names are the names of families in my hometown. And so by the time I got to New York, you know, and heard some of these same names, it was very familiar for me. Orangeburg was settled by Germans, and so I grew up with kids who had names like Zimmerman, Hildebrand, Ziegler. So this is sort of a tribute to my hometown, and the figure on this shack is representative of the many different kinds of people in Orangeburg County.
Hello, my name is Marcia Yerman. The show is Women in Art. Today our guest is Beverly Buchanan. We are on location at the Steinbaum-Kraus Gallery in Soho, where Beverly is having an exhibition of her drawings and sculpture. Through our conversations with Beverly, we will learn about her activities in the civil rights movement, about her 2 degrees in science and public health, her Guggenheim Fellowship, and her grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. Beverly, first of all, I want to thank you for joining me. Your path to devoting yourself completely to your art has been a very interesting one. And I'd like to discuss some of this chronology with you and to have you share with our viewers the influential factors in your background. And I'd like to start with your father. He was the dean of the Department of Agriculture at South Carolina State College. He was also an agricultural agent for the state. He traveled, advising and teaching tenant farmers and sharecroppers. And as a young girl, you accompanied him on these trips.
Yes.
Tell us about that and how that affected you.
Well, it exposed me to people and places with which I was not familiar every day. And he was a man who sent me to Catholic school because he thought Catholic schools gave a good education. And he also believed in exposing people, exposing himself to different activities and different people. And he got his bachelor's, his education at what we call Talladega. They now call it Talladega. And according to my mother, he was a senior when the administration building burned to the ground and they wouldn't let any of the students graduate. And he started all over again as a freshman, eventually ending up at Ohio State getting a master's in agricultural economics. And so when I went to Catholic school, that meant that I had lots of holidays. So that holidays and summer times was a time that I had to go around with him. In the meantime, I'm in school. But I was with him when he went to visit some of his students and to see how they were doing as farmers, because he was trying to convince them to rotate crops. You know, if you planted cotton in this spot for a long time, try peanuts or something. And he was not well received because cotton was growing there and it was successful, and so why would you try anything else?
This whole science background of your father's, you developed an interest in science partially because of his influence. Can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to pursue medicine?
First of all, the chemistry and biology departments were in the same building that where my father's class and office. So that was a familiar building for me. And so that may have had something to do with it.
You talked about the pressures of being raised in a middle-class family in the 50s, being brought up with the idea that you had to make a contribution to society. But your family wanted it to be in the area of medicine. When did you first acknowledge to yourself the feelings that you had about wanting to be an artist, because you got those degrees?
I thought I wanted to pursue medicine, and but at the same time, I was always drawing and making things, making objects. And my father had a friend who was a landscape architect, and I would try to do little things that he did, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was a health educator in New Jersey that I started in '69 actually, but it wasn't until '71 that I tried to give serious thought to medical school. But then I really had to think about whether I really wanted to be a doctor or whether I really wanted to be an artist, and that was the hardest thing I think I ever had to decide. And I decided I was going to try to see if I could really do what I wanted to do as an artist. And I wasn't really sure what that was. But in the 50s, growing up, especially black kids, you pretty much had to know what you wanted to do. There was, I was familiar with a person on the college campus who was an artist, but he was also a teacher, so I never knew anyone who made a living. You just didn't know anybody who made a living as an artist. And everybody in my family, my grandmother, and all her sisters and brothers, everybody was a teacher. And so by not being a teacher meant that I was really going against the family tradition. And it was just really hard to make that decision.
But in 1971, you started taking classes at the Art Students League.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I met Norman Lewis. Well, actually, I'd seen examples of Norman's work in books, and met him, and yeah, I started doing that.
And then you had your first exhibit at the Cinque Gallery.
Yes.
Right?
That was by accident. I'd written Romare Bearden a letter, and
Before you even mention Romare Bearden, I want you to tell the audience how you met him.
You're kidding.
No, I really want you to tell that. Because it's such a great story.
Oh, but it's true. Unfortunately, it's true. A friend of mine was a friend of Dizzy Gillespie, and David Frost was hosting this Art in the Park jazz concert. Romare Bearden had designed a poster for it, and I wanted the poster. And I think you could only get the poster if you went to the concert, and it was at Alice Tully Hall. And so I drove in, and my friend Marcia met me there, and we were listening, and it was at intermission. Marcia said, "I'm going to go say hello to Dizzy. Why don't you see if you can find Romare Bearden's poster?" And I said, "Fine." So I got up and I found the poster. It was something like $15 or something, and I purchased it, and wanted him to, I thought it'd be great if he could sign it, and there were just mobs of people around this man getting him to do the same thing. and I just waited. I thought, well, at some point, you know, this crowd's going to disappear. And at long last, there he was, walking away from this group. And I thought, now is my chance, and so I followed him and walked in this door, and there I was in the men's room at Alice Tully Hall, and started backing out, hoping no one would see me, and backed right into Norman Lewis, and turned and said, "Oh my God, you're Norman Lewis. I loved your work long before I knew you were black." And Norman took me by the arm. Norman didn't even go in. He was laughing, and he said, "Come over and meet him." I said, "Oh no, I can't do that. I can't possibly meet this man." And so he went over and he said, "Romy, this young lady wants to meet you." And he turned and he said, he'd asked me, was I an artist? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, "And what is your name?" And I said, "My name." I couldn't say my name. Nothing came out. And I just held the poster, and he said, "Would you like me to sign it?" I said, "Yes, thank you." And then I said my name.
He became a mentor of yours.
He absolutely did. Well, then I wrote him. It was like months later, I wrote him a letter and said that I told him how we had met, and hoped that he hadn't remembered that, really, kind of. And he wrote and said, I'd be glad to look at your work, come and see me, and he gave me his address on Canal Street, and said that we have a gallery for artists, and that's how it happened. Well, what happened was I saw the gallery, and they were having a women's show, and one of the young ladies dropped out at the last minute, even though her name had been included in the New York Times, and so he asked if I would mind, would I consent to do that, even though my name wouldn't be in the Times? I said yes.
Right away.
And that, yeah, so that's how it happened. I got work and you know, yeah.
Jack Truman also was a mentor of yours, wasn't he?
Yes. I was actually on jury duty in New Jersey. And Jack Truman had a reputation for looking at artists' work. You could just walk in and show him your work.
Right.
And one day when when jury was not in session, a friend of mine was coming into Manhattan, and her mother was paying for her dental work. And I said, why don't I just go with you and show this to Jack Truman? I said, I'm sure he won't like it, and we can just go on back to New Jersey. She said, fine, and I'll, you know. And so we planned on a certain time, and I got the elevator, went up, and, you know, prepared this book, and he looked at it and said, oh, I love these pieces. You just missed being in my new talent show. I said, you what? He said, I love them. When can I see them? And I remember looking at my watch thinking, I said, oh my God, I've got to get back to New Jersey. I said, well, I don't know, I've got to go back to New Jersey. Maybe I'll bring some in on Saturday. And went back downstairs, and Carol said, I've been circling the block for 4 times. What happened? I said, he loved the work. And that's kind of how that happened. And I really couldn't bring the work in to show him. I don't remember what happened, but Andy Woodner was a friend, and Andy had a studio downtown and took them in a taxi for me to the gallery. And so I was included in the new talent show. My name was typed in on this little card, you know.
But you were there?
Yeah.
Okay. You've stated, I want to create things that strike a familiar chord in people somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, I guess it means that I really wanted people to find something about the work that meant something personally to them. I don't know at the time why that was so important, but I guess I'm still trying to do the same thing.
Okay. Well, so much has been written about your work. The term oral witnessing comes up frequently, and your shacks have variously been described as documents, symbols, visual testaments, statements of cultural pride, tributes to humanity. How would you describe them?
Oh, just a bunch of wood.
Come on, you're being too modest.
No, I still am attracted to offbeat looking architectural things. I like extremely contemporary houses, and I just like architecture, really. I really do.
In your work, do you find that people respond differently to your sculpture than to your drawings? Do they, any kind of difference in the way they react to them?
A little. The reaction to the drawings has usually to do with a specific place, a beach, or oh, that reminds me of, well, you know, some beach that I've never seen actually, or something. That's what the drawings do. But the three-dimensional pieces seem to remind people of specific places. Yeah, specific places. Instead of saying, I saw this in Florida, or I saw this in Georgia, or in fact, this past week, a pharmacist said, one of your sculptures, I told you, reminded me of a house, looked just like a house I grew up in Oklahoma. He said, and I went back home. I went to Oklahoma to see it again. You've made me go back home. And so what I'm hearing is people are saying things to me like that. You're making me think about home. Even if home doesn't exist anymore, that home, your idea of what home was.
Yeah. You're connecting with them on a real visceral level.
Apparently so. Yeah. Apparently so. Apparently I'm doing that.
Okay. Talking about the way you affect people, I'd like to talk about the role that you've played in actively challenging people's perceptions about accepted norms in our society. And I'd like to start back in 1961 when you participated in the first lunch counter sit-down strike at Woolworths.
That they're now closing.
Yeah, in Greensboro, South Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yes.
What exactly happened?
Because of all the science, because I was pursuing a bachelor's degree in medical technology, I was swamped with various science courses, which left me almost no time to, for example, join the art club in college. And but I would hang out with art department kids anytime I did and could do that. And one of the things I eventually was asked to do was to make some of the picket signs. And one night it was raining, and students were picketing all the time. And one night it was raining, and a young lady came to my room and said, "There's no one downtown picketing Woolworths. People are going to think that we don't want to picket because it's raining, that we're too good to go out in the rain." And I said, "Oh no, let's go." So about 5 of us went, and we went without escorts, which was against everything we'd been taught to do. You'd never go. And with our picket signs, and a little mob was waiting for us and beat the devil out of us with bats that had nails in it. That was quite something. And one of the picket lines in front of Woolworths, another time a group amassed and attacked us, and I jumped one man and tried to choke him to death. And that was an extremely embarrassing situation. I was asked to leave the line, not return, because we were a non-violent.
Right.
And so that was I was never proud of that.
But in New York, not too much later in the 60s, things were not as blatant, but they weren't too much different when you went in and said, you'd like them to look at your work. And they said, we don't show black
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
And you had a great response. Because you were doing, you said, yeah.
Well, I was, heavily influenced by abstract expressionism, and I think it still shows in some of the work. And I was not prepared for that. I had not heard that, and I was not prepared for that response. And I just kind of spontaneously said, I was used to hearing, we don't show abstract work, or we are looking for figurative work. I was prepared for that response, not something that had to do with my being black. And I just thought, oh, well, good, here, let me show you what because I thought, what I thought it meant was that we don't show black art, meaning figurative art. And since I was not doing figurative art, I thought, oh, okay, here's my chance to show you this. So I said, yeah, right. Well, I certainly learned that wasn't true.
But it seems all the way down the line. And now you were getting comments much later, now as a woman, when people would say, what great working for a woman. So you've kind of heard a lot of comments like
I'd never paid much attention to that so much, because I'd always sort of done what I wanted to do. Yeah. Well, I had my family backed me on that. I never heard you can't do anything because you're a woman. My parents never, or people around me never. I never heard that.
Okay, so you heard it from other people, but not from the people
who accounted for me.
Right,
No.
That brings me to something that I'd like to talk with you about, which is the issue of validation. And in an interview that you had in 1989 with an Atlanta newspaper, you addressed that. And in this sense, it was about being a Southern artist. I have a little bit of it here. I just want to share it with the audience and then have you comment. You talked about how you moved back to the South in 1977. And you said, and I want to tell you, I paid my dues. I didn't sell much, and it was hard. Then I got a New York gallery. All of a sudden, my lithographs are in Southern accents, and I'm getting calls from Southern corporations who want to buy my work. But that didn't happen until I got my New York gallery. And then you go on to state, I think it's ironic. Now, does that mean my work's okay? Why didn't they buy my work when it was in Atlanta? It's the same work. It's just that the price is 3 times more. What does that mean?
I still don't know what it means, because that's still happening. It's happening to other artists, and I really don't know what it means. I think at one time I had an artist in the school's residency in a little town north of Macon, between Macon and Atlanta, and one of my jobs was to talk with community groups, explain what I was doing in the schools with children. And I met with, there were 2 or 3 garden clubs in this little town, and I met one garden club, and the group said, we don't know about your work, and I don't know why. And I said, well, I have an Atlanta gallery. They said, oh, we don't go to Atlanta. We go either to New York or Europe and buy our work. And I think that's kind of a trend. I think that's hard to change. And I think people still do that that people, I think even if I had work in Atlanta, they would still come to New York to look for it.
Is there anything that you would like to say or address to the audience in terms of your feelings about your life as an artist and your work and what you've dealt with in your life? Anything that you want to pass on to us or tell us?
I had an opportunity to go to medical school. I was devastated because I said no. I was an alternate at Mount Sinai. And that was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. And at the time, I thought that I had really ruined it for other black women. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, the best thing that I think I can do for myself is to try to do what I want to do and be the best that I can be at that. And in spite of health problems and money problems that happened early, I'm still going to do this, and because nobody's asking me to do it. And I think that that's what art is about, is it's something that you have to do and that you're going to do it whether anybody recognizes it or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad that you certainly have gotten the recognition that you deserve, and I'm very pleased that you could be here with us and talk to us and share everything with us, and I know my audience is going to be really excited to learn about you.
Well, I hope that people who see this who may want to give up, because I've met people who said, I used to be an artist. I said, what does that mean? Does that mean like you used to be a dancer? You're a dancer because you dance, and you're an artist because you do things. I hope people don't give up.
Thank you so much for being here and for saying those words and giving courage to the people who might be watching the show who've been working hard and feel that they can't make it. It's kind of what the show's about, and I'm very pleased to have had you as a guest.
I'm pleased that you asked me.
Thanks, Beverly.
Thank you. I was invited to give a talk to the high school art students in Georgia who had been selected by their art teachers as prize-winning artists, and what I said to them was, keep doing what you're doing. Work, do something no matter what. If you have to use a window shade, just go ahead and do it, and don't let anybody tell you that you're wasting your time. And I just said, I had them all stand, and I just said, I'm very proud of you. And I said, because all the rest of the people around you who are educators and who are doing other things wouldn't exist without you. And I thought, I really hope you just keep doing it, because you have to do it. And that's what a real artist is. You have to do it. It's not, you don't just think, well, I may do it. Next year I'll do something else. I'll be a pharmacist. Yeah. You may be a pharmacist, but you're still going to do this. That's something that you have to do, that no matter what, you have to do it.
I hope you have enjoyed this interview with artist Beverly Buchanan. Please join me again next month for a new edition of Women in Art.